Meyer crossed the finish line. Billy did a tremendous job in keeping this car under control as he gradually brought it to a safe stop. Fortunately, Meyer uninjured in the explosion.
Billy, all the King's horses and all the King's men couldn't have put that body together again that you blew off. You're getting ready for the Big Bud Shootout.
No, there wasn't enough super glue in the world, I don't think. It definitely, did major damage and stuff, and if we had gotten a different car, we would have had to requalify. However, with the rules, just by keeping the same car and changing bodies, we stayed qualified after that run. That's with, Kenny Bernstein's help, that's what we elected to do.
Meyer, with the same car but a different body, now faces Tim Gross in his Corvette-bodied car in this, the first round of the Big Bud Shootout. $30,000 cash up for grabs to the winner of this very special 8-car field. It is Meyer in the near lane, Gross in the far lane. Both cars are now staged and ready, and it is Meyer off the starting line first. Meyer continues to extend his lead. A bit of smoke and an engine explosion for Tim Gross. The parts of the engine and body flying off the car. Gross fighting for control. It heads to the guardrail, but he brings it to a safe stop, parking it on the grass right next to the racetrack. The car continuing to smoke. That's Tim Gross coming out of the escape hatch and rolling off the top of the car. There's Billy Meyer over to check on Gross to see about his condition. Gross suffering one of the major engine explosions of his career. As he approached the finish line, the car literally exploded into a ball of flame, and in the center of that fireball is Tim Gross. Earlier, Steve showed us how complicated it is to drive one of these cars. Consider Tim Gross. He's already performed some 8 separate maneuvers to this point. Then the engine explodes. Now he's got to worry about hitting the fire bottles, but most importantly, keeping the car under control, driving it in his own lane to a safe and upright stop. All of this with a fire coming up directly in his face.
It looked like you tried to get it stopped just as quickly as you could to get out of it.
Yeah, I did. Obviously, the fire came right in on my face, so I was doing what I could do to get the fire bottles to activate and all. But when the window's gone out and the fire's come in your face, it's really hard to contain that fire up front. I don't know if the tank exploded yet or not. I didn't even look at it yet.
Sorry to see you have all these problems.
Well, thank you, Stephen. That's part of the game, right?
Tim Gross out of competition but uninjured, protected by the NHRA safety rules that have once again done their job. The Big Bud Shootout is being brought to you by Budweiser, that clean, crisp taste that says Budweiser. Race fans, this Bud's for you. More first-round action of the Big Bud Shootout after this. Going on in Billy Meyer's pit area as they prepare the car for the semifinal round of the Big Bud Shootout. The Meyer crew, under the direction of Mike Guger and Mark Stewart, doing all the necessary between-round maintenance on that 3,000 horsepower engine. We're at Indianapolis Raceway Park for the Big Bud Shootout. This is round number 1 action, and this is Ed McCulloch. He has the distinction of racing against Mark Oswald at the wheel of the Candies and Hughes Pontiac. Oswald, the 1984 NHRA World Champion from Cleves, Ohio, drives the car that is based out of Houma, Louisiana. For McCulloch, home is Hemet, California, and he drives the Oldsmobile Forenza out of the racing team owned by Larry Minor. These cars are here as a result of their qualifying performances throughout the entire season at NHRA national events. McCulloch is lined up in the far lane of the racetrack. In the near lane is Mark Oswald. Both cars are ready. McCulloch responds first. He's off the starting line ahead of Mark Oswald, but look at the horsepower of the Candies and Hughes car. Just thunders past in the finish line to a 5.73-second elapsed time at 258 miles an hour. Back at the starting line, our next pair getting ready. This is the car driven by John Force, a Chevrolet Cavalier. And here is the winner of the Big Bud Shootout back in 1984, Tom McEwen. After nearly 30 years behind the wheel of drag racing vehicles, McEwen enjoying his best season ever. He's already won 2 races this year. The Cajun Nationals down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the North Star Nationals up at Brainerd, Minnesota. For John Force, he has yet to win a national event, but his qualifying efforts this season put him in a very commanding position here in the Big Bud Shootout. For Tom McEwen, his highest qualifying positions came in the 2 races he has won this season. The burnouts are completed, both drivers now concentrating on the procedures necessary to get a good start. Following the directions of their crewmen, they pull up close to the starting line. Then they inch forward into the staging beams that go across the racetrack. They are light beams. When they are in the proper position, the 2 lights on the top of the Christmas tree indicate to starter Buster Couch, anytime now you can throw the switch. And it's a green light start for both drivers. A little bit of smoke, but a close race. At the finish line, John Force by a matter of inches. John Force defeats Tom McEwen, and what a great race it was. 5.86 seconds. His speed, 252 miles an hour. Let's take a look at this one again. It is McEwen in the far lane, John Force in the near lane. They leave the starting line with McEwen getting an ever so slight advantage. But John Force puts together a great run in the middle of the racetrack. He begins to pull ahead of Tom McEwen, and as he just inches by, they near the finish line, and there you see it. By about a wheel length, John Force defeats Tom McEwen.
Well, Dave, as you saw, that race was so close. John Force, you didn't know for sure if you'd won it.
I didn't know, but I was upset from the start line. I got that old look through the window, drive it off again. I'm telling Cole, what are we doing now? But he seemed to know, and it worked. And I made a move on McEwen, and he came back around me again, and I'm thinking, wow. Next thing I know, I'm in the lights, and I'm looking for someone to cheer. What's wrong with these people down here? They got to let me know who's winning these races.
Well, here I am to do just that. Austin said what to you, or showed you what sign?
He looked through the window, and he said, she ain't holding on the starting line. Drive her off again. We know she'll muscle and run 67 like she did the other day. And
how does he tell you that? You can't hear him.
Oh, he gives me a little bit of this, a little of that, and throws in pizzazz like he always does and confuses me. But this weekend we got serious. He told me what he wanted and drove it off, and thank God it worked.
Go get him.
Thank you.
John Force talking about his crew chief, Austin Coyle, as if he were a baseball coach in the third base box, giving signals to his batter. Our next pair getting ready to go. The defending champion, the #1 qualifier, is in the near lane. That's Kenny Bernstein. He is racing against Johnny West. West out of Chandler, Arizona, the latest in a long series of drivers for his car owner and crew chief, Roland Leong. West, in his first full season of NHRA National Event Competition, qualified very well for the Big Bud Shootout, but he'll need all the performance he can find here today as he is racing the hottest driver on the circuit, Kenny Bernstein. In time trials yesterday, Bernstein ran the fastest time ever by a funny car at over 271 miles an hour. Bernstein is the reigning world champion and had an incredible season a year ago when he won 6 NHRA national events, a new record, plus this race, the Big Bud Shootout. Thus far this season, he has won 2 races, the Grand Nationals in Canada and the Summer Nationals in Englishtown, New Jersey. He's the odds-on favorite to repeat as the world champion of funny cars. The lights go green, and Bernstein goes up in smoke. He moves first, but the car's smoking violently, and Johnny West, in the upset of the Big Bud Shootout, moves into the semifinals. What a disappointment it has to be for the defending champion. Kenny Bernstein moved first. The tires instantly lost traction. Huge clouds of smoke billowed up out of the rear of the car. As we see in slow motion replay, Bernstein had the advantage off the starting line, but it went away instantly, and Johnny West headed to the finish line and took the big win.
Now some confidence for the semifinal.
Well, you know, we always have a tough round. Nobody's easy around here, so, you know, as Bernstein knows, you know, nobody's a for sure win, so we'll just press right on.
Thank you, man.
Johnny West with a bright smile on his face, obviously showing the elation of the moment as he took the upset win over the #1 qualifier. That sets up our semifinal pairings. John Force against Billy Meyer. Meyer has lane choice by virtue of the lower elapsed time of the first round. And Johnny West may have gone from the frying pan right into the fire. He races Mark Oswald, who had a 5.73-second elapsed time, the quickest of the first round of eliminations. And this is the legendary Austin Coyle, preparing a piston for the semifinal round of John Force's car at the Big Bud Shootout. Along with Steve Evans, and a huge crowd has jammed into Indianapolis Raceway Park to watch the 8 best funny cars in the world do battle. We're down to 4 cars, the semi-final round. John Force against Billy Meyer. Meyer in the far lane of the racetrack, not using the normal Mustang body. He destroyed that in that time trial explosion. Perhaps the most interested spectator amongst this huge crowd is at the far end of the racetrack with Steve Evans.
Dave, joining me down here at the far end is 4-time funny car world champion Don Prudhomme. And Don, the semifinals of the Big Bud Shootout are coming up. Your impressions, predictions, if you will. First, let's take John Force versus Billy Meyer.
Well, Force, you know, it just ran very good the run before, and racing Myers got a little bit of advantage. So I like to see Myers have the advantage on the run.
You know, Myers had that terrible fire and explosion. Sometimes it's hard to get back on track after something like that.
It is, but I was surprised he came out so well in the first round of the Bud Shootout with the 75, and to come back, I think he's got a lot of momentum going right now.
Okay, Mark Oswald and his opponent Johnny West.
Well, Mark Oswald's my pick. He's strong. Mark's, you know, he's been running good all year, and he's running very quick the first round. I'd like to see him go all the way.
All right, let's go back to Dave McClellan and the semifinals of the Big Bud Shootout.
And Steve, as you know, Don Prudhomme will be back in competition in 1987, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him right here in the midst of the Big Bud Shootout, because he always races hard and qualifies very well. But the spotlight right now is on these 2 cars. This is Billy Meyer racing against John Force, and there's Austin Coyle. Watch close. Maybe you can pick up some of the tips that John Force gets from his crew chief by virtue of hand signals. That one obviously indicates, let's stop. And now he says, roll it forward, I guess. But now Austin Coyle goes through this procedure, relaying to John Force what he thinks the driver should do to get the car off the starting line. There was the signal, the wave from John Force. He acknowledged it. Now we'll see if he understood it, because as we heard him say, sometimes he's just a bit confused by all those hand signals from Austin Coyle. Oh, what a great start by Billy Meyer. He has a problem or two, and look at the tire smoke for John Force. But Force wins the race by a car length, as Billy Meyer had problems after that great start. The elapsed time for Force of 5.83 second elapsed time. Remember, though, he was smoking the tires in the middle of the course. Here we see it happen again. Meyer, look at him leave. He put a whole shot on John Force. It was almost like a train link. The crew acknowledging Meyer is out in front, then he has to lift. The car going into tire shake and smoking the tires, as is John Force. But Force recovered, regained the traction, got back on the throttle, and by a car length or 2, won the race over Billy Meyer.
Well, for the second time today, John Force has had to come from behind, and the way the tires started to haze, I really wondered if you were going to be able to do that.
It wasn't a little drive off that time. It was a whole bunch of drive off.
You mean easy?
Yeah, there was no half throttle looking to do. She was shaking, and she moved out, and I'm looking at Coyle like, what's he going to do? And I knew he had me. He was out of car, and I was wanting to put her on the wood, and every time I do this, I choke it, and I left it at half throttle, and we outguessed him, we outlucked him, beat Bernstein twice, beat Myers. Who was that?
Kind of looks like Bernstein.
I know that. Yeah, it's just the brakes for me. That he fell, it's going to hurt us. So what kind of ET we run?
583.
83? Amazes me what they'll do at halfback, these little plastic funny cars, huh?
See you in the final round.
John Force, a man that obviously takes a great deal of pleasure at his profession. He's into the finals of the Big Bud Shootout. He'll race one of these 2 cars. Will it be Johnny West, or will it be Mark Oswald? A dramatic side-by-side burnout to heat up those huge slicks to try to provide as much traction as possible for the some 3,000 horsepower that are generated by these racing engines that use nitromethane for fuel. For Mark Oswald, he has been the class of the field thus far. He has low elapsed time with that Candies and Hughes Pontiac. But don't forget, Johnny West is in an upset mood. He just put away the #1 qualifier and defending champion Kenny Bernstein in the first round. Driving the Dodge Daytona car, that's Roland Leong raising the body. A crewman going under doing something at the front of the engine. Nobody has got any kind of frantic moves. It appears that it may have been planned. But it's very unusual to see them raise the body on these cars once the engines have started and the driver begins his burnout procedure. Oswald calmly waiting as now Johnny West pulls up to the starting line. The car owner, Paul Candies, directing traffic for Oswald. Roland Leong doing the same for Johnny West. Whatever it was that they raised the body for, it obviously is presenting no problem as West is into the staging beams, and so is Oswald. And West West goes up in smoke. Oswald streaking towards the finish line. West shuts it off, but Oswald into the finals to race against John Force. Look at the elapsed time. 5.68 seconds to cover 1,320 feet from a standing start. We watch again and see Johnny West in the far lane just instantly go up in smoke. The moment he hit the throttle, the huge slicks losing traction, billowing smoke. From then on, it was Mark Oswald all the way.
With the quickest run of the Big Bud eliminations, a 5.68 Mark Oswald, you go into the final. But, you know, I think lane choice might have been a good factor for you. He smoked the tires very hard in that other lane.
Did he? Ours was really close. The car, John Force's car, I noticed on his run, pulled to the right real hard, and ours did the same thing, and I was just lucky enough to recover.
Can you go to the starting line in the final with this kind of horsepower? Would you maybe back it down a little bit? Force only ran a 5.83.
Yeah, but, you know, he ran a 66 in qualifying. He could step up at any time. That run's going to be at 5 o'clock. It'll be a little cooler. The racetrack may be a little better. I'm sure we'll try to soften it up just a little bit, though.
Good job.
Thank you.
When we come back, $30,000 will be on the line on one single race between Mark Oswald and John Force as these two face each other down in the finals of the Big Bud Shootout. Mark Oswald at the wheel of the Candies and Hughes Pontiac against the Chevrolet of John Force. $30,000 up for grabs in this single run over a quarter-mile distance. Recognizing the fact that these drivers have been competing for an entire season to earn the right to race in the Big Bud Shootout, in this final run, the winner will be compensated at a rate of more than $5,200 a second or $22 a foot for the quarter-mile run. Consider that the next time you go in and ask your boss for a raise. Of course, the money has got to increase the pressure on Mark Oswald and John Force, and Force has the whole shot, but Force crosses the center line and Oswald wins the race. Oswald wins. Force disqualified after a great starting line maneuver when he pulled ahead of Mark Oswald. Mark ran a 5.72 second elapsed time, but it really wasn't important. What happened was Mark Oswald was late off the starting line. John Force had the advantage, but smoked the tires, lost control, went across the center line, and was disqualified. At that point, Mark Oswald, the Big Bud Shootout champion, $30,000 richer.
Knowing this young man as I do, I would say more than the $30,000 is the satisfaction he gets today from defeating 7 of the best funny cars in all the world. And what a valiant opponent he had in the final round, John Force. Mark, you did it. Congratulations.
Thank you. We're really happy for Old Milwaukee, Pontiac Motorsports. You know, we're just tickled to death, and to Budweiser for putting on an event like this to where we can race for this kind of money. You know, it was a great battle in qualifying for it all year, and, you know, John Force was right there. In fact, he qualified ahead of me. It was just anybody's race.
He was off the mark first.
Was he? Yeah, it was a good race. I saw, I think he came right over the center line. I know he must have had traction problems. Our car was a little bit loose.
But indeed, it's a fine day for Paul Candies, Leonard Hughes, and Mark Oswald. A world title, and now this. Quite a career.
Yeah, everybody on the crew's just been, you know, working as hard as they can, and we'll be back again tomorrow for the same thing.
In spite of all that money, Oswald ready again for another day of racing. The Big Bud Shootout has been brought to you by Budweiser, that clean, crisp taste that says Budweiser. Race fans, this Bud's for you. This has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.